Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast. Mandee and Ashley Fisher dig into conversation about women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, and celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast. Presented by Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler, Texas. Hey, it's Mandee Montana, and you know I love to relax, right? I've shared the secret of where I go and some of my favorite treatments. Now I want to spotlight something else for you. The incredible staff at Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler. This month I want to tell you about Kim. If silence makes you uncomfortable, go with Kim because she is delightful to talk to, friendly, and applies just the right amount of pressure to make sure you relax those knots. With Kim, I chose the Tyler Special. What is that? Well, it's a wonderful combination of opposing pressure. You get the negative pressure with the gentle slide of the cups and the positive pressure of her hands. When applied together, they offer deep relief and detox. The Tyler Special also includes my favorite add-on, the Himalayan salt stones. They exfoliate the skin and make it glow. Ask for the Tyler Special when you schedule your next massage. Visit Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa located in the Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com.
Well, welcome back to the Celebrating Women podcast. I am Ashley Fisher.
And I'm Mandee.
And we are, again, it's just Mandee and I. We were going to have a guest, but she's going to have to reschedule. And it's a good opportunity for Mandee and I to talk about a topic that we talked about for a minute the other day. And we both kind of were like, ooh, like that's something we might want to talk about. First, though, one thing that was on my mind is, Mandee, I was telling you off mic that a friend of mine came in the studio the other day saying how much of a blessing the podcast has been to her. She's been listening. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like,
really?
I don't know why. I'm like, oh, you're listening? That's so cool. But it had me thinking, I want to hear more from our audience. I really want to hear from those of you that have listened to one episode, from those of you that are maybe avid listeners to each episode. I want to know who you are. I want to know what you're thinking. So what's the best way for that to happen? Email?
Sure.
Or Facebook, like put a post on the Facebook page. I would just love to up the interaction with our audience a little bit.
I would love that too, because I've gotten some of that feedback directly as well. And it's really great. I mean, I don't know. I just want to share it with others, I guess.
Yeah.
And I mean, our friend Tiffany that came by and talked about yoga and faith here in East Texas, she's been listening for months, really so since we started. And she's actually shared it with a few people who've then reached out and told me that they're listening, but it's just kind of grown, and there's been a little bit of a ripple effect with friends, which is really nice and sweet and kind of what we were hoping for, but we didn't know if it would happen or not.
And I think too, like, I would love to know, when, as you guys are listening and you're thinking about celebrating women and the kinds of topics that you would love to hear about, what would you like to hear about, and who would you like to hear from? Like, I don't know. So
I would love that too.
Yeah. So show up, y'all. Celebrating Women podcast on Facebook. I think that's the best way, because then Mandee and I can both, we can both read an email, but you can get into conversation too on Facebook, and we can just kind of go from there. So there's my plug.
I love it. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. So,
Yes, so we're going to talk about the power of and I know Mandee is going, okay. So this has been a common thread over the last year of life for me, this concept of just the power of and. We live in a world where we are often not comfortable with two opposing things being true at the same time. And in listening to a podcast over this last year that I've really enjoyed, that's been super timely for my stage of life, this concept of giving permission and being okay with two opposing things being true at the same time. And you just join it with this little word, and it's so powerful. The podcast that I listen to, it's called The Basement by Tim Ross, and he'll talk about how honor should never come at the cost of honesty. So, like, for instance, if sometimes we have this like, well, I really want to honor my parents, so I don't feel like I can say or be honest about my experience, and so he'll say, it's okay for two things to be true. I had an amazing, and this is just an example, I had an amazing mom, and she wasn't there for me emotionally. Those two things can actually be true at the same time.
I feel like you're not talking about your own mother
at the
moment. I didn't think so, but just to clarify,
I'm not.
That was an example not from Ashley's
Yes.
childhood or life.
No, because Lord knows Robin Walker is there for you emotionally, and she's amazing. This is just an example I pulled out of my head.
I got one.
Okay.
It's real, and I'm okay with sharing it, and it's very close to that, and it's that I had amazing parents, 4 of them really, because my parents remarried, so I have incredible step parents as well, and they were often not able to be present at my activities because I was doing so many of them, and because they were all providing for my brother and me. So yeah, totally, like those two things can be true, and I'm super grateful for my childhood.
You're right.
And they were sometimes not present the way other parents were present for their children, of my peers and my classmates. Yeah.
Do you catch yourself when you're saying that, wanting to say, but?
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I do catch myself often. It's been a common thread for you. It has been for me too. And I think it first came to mind for me actually from a different podcast, but also from a podcast. I was listening to Brene Brown interview Richard Rohr. And I think most people are familiar with Brene Brown, but she's a researcher and a therapist and an author, incredible, and obviously podcaster. And then Richard Rohr is an author. He's a Franciscan preacher, pastor. I'm getting it wrong, probably priest. Anyway.
One of them.
One of those guys. Anyway, his work is beautiful. It's really, really beautiful and inclusive and loving in his references to God and spirituality and whatnot. And they were having this really fun conversation, and they were both using the word "and" to bring in opposing ideas and thoughts in hopes that it joins and unifies us more than it divides, because the word "but" tends to.
Yeah.
It's like, something's coming when somebody uses the word "but."
Well, yeah. I mean, because you think about with your spouse or with a friend, if they ever say, I love you, but I really get frustrated when you don't do X, Y, Z. It's like it almost negates the first statement. And I'm such a words person too, so this is why I nerd out about this. And just allows the two things to be true. Like with my spouse, I love you so much. And when you don't help around the house, it really makes me feel unseen, and it makes me feel frustrated. Because when you put it that way, you're not negating the first thing, the love. You know what I mean?
I do.
And so you can, and I think that's a powerful tool for relationships. But here's I think my biggest thing is that it has been so powerful for me, because there is, like with your example, in saying "and," you're allowing yourself to just be very cognizant and aware of these two things. And you're not downplaying your emotions. You know what I mean?
I do.
I mean, so often we'll say, oh, well, no, she was great. She was just so great. But, or the inverse, like, well, yeah, they could be really critical, but she meant well. And right there in that phrase, in that sentence, that person is downplaying the experience that they had with that person. Oh, but she meant so well. But yeah, she did make me feel like a small human being whenever I was around her. And it's okay to be like, hey, I know her intentions were pure as the driven snow, maybe. And she had a tendency to make me feel really small when I was around her. That kind of a thing. I don't know. I just think it's such a powerful thing. Again, because we live in just this world, especially now, where it's like black or white, up or down, you got to choose a lane. And we're so uncomfortable with the fact that we live in the gray, y'all.
We really do. And that is hard for some people to wrap their minds around. I was having a conversation with my mom about actually the use of words. I've got something kind of in the works, and there's a legal document that I've been reviewing and looking after. And I asked my mom to take a peek at it because my mom is very like black and white. When she reads something, she reads it at face value.
Yeah.
She takes it very seriously. It's one way or the other. There's not a lot of gray in her world.
Yeah.
And I exist in a lot of gray. And so you can imagine what my childhood was like. Not kidding. I love my mother. I pick at her sometimes because I'm at a place in my life now where I appreciate the differences in us. Where when I was younger, it was more of that butt
Yes.
feeling. We were literally butting heads, and there was a lot of "I love you, but you frustrate me" kind of thing. But as I've gotten older, I have a much greater appreciation for the for the things that she does bring to the table, because she is looking at it from a different perspective, and it allows me to stop and go, okay, is this, Mandee, are your initial feelings about this what you really feel? Or do you need a different perspective to come in and maybe shift and make an adjustment and go, okay, no, this is really the best way to move.
Yeah.
And we were having this conversation yesterday, and I was just picking at her. I was like, you are so black and white. I think really it's going to be fine. And she was like, just have an attorney look at it and I'll just double check. And I was like, okay, Mom, it'll
Your
be
little
fine.
Gray free spirit is over here like, it'll be fine.
But really, in the document, the way that it was worded, the word "and" was in there. And in a different way, it was saying that my intellectual property, or the company's intellectual property, and could potentially lead to other things that maybe that were not the property of the company. And so it's a little word.
It's powerful.
But it's a very powerful word.
Yep.
And that's a totally different context other than relationships. I mean, business relationship, I guess. But it does have a lot of power. And to stop and think about it. And I do catch myself a lot now whenever I'm having conversations with my spouse, when I'm having conversations with friends, I'll say something and I'm about to use the word "but," and I will stop myself and think, would "and" be a better choice here?
Yeah. Yeah.
And oftentimes it is.
Yeah. We are very, very programmed and very accustomed to that word "but." We use it a lot. We just do. And I just think it's just been very empowering for me personally. What it's done is, especially in some very challenging and hard to navigate relationship situations over the last year, it has empowered me to be very honest with how I feel or how my experience with someone has made me feel. Because I'm someone that has a tendency to just go, oh, no, it's fine. Because I give the benefit of the doubt.
You'd rather be in pain than put someone else in pain.
Yeah.
I know.
And so, but it has allowed me to say things like, he meant well and he failed. Or he has a great heart. And no, I'm not talking about my husband. I'm just talking about a friendship, the long-term friendship, like a pastor type figure. And it's enabled me to say he had great intentions and he failed. Or he has a great heart and he disappeared. Or just, I don't know, it just has enabled me to go, okay, I acknowledge the things in this person that are good. And I'm also acknowledging the things in this person that are not okay. And for somebody like me who tends to just go, oh, well, if they meant well, then it's all okay. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Am I making sense or am I rambling?
No, you're making sense. I think it's what you're finally doing is allowing yourself to feel things. I know on other episodes of the podcast, you've talked about how it's been harder for you to name emotions because frankly, years ago, you didn't have names for those emotions and now you do. And so I feel like you're evolving in your understanding of yourself and how you feel and how you express yourself and how comfortable you are becoming expressing yourself about others. It's hard to be there and be comfortable with that if you don't know how to express yourself at all.
Yes.
And so I feel like this is a natural progression of where, you know, you've started to recognize and name your own feelings. And now you're also being able to go, okay, I feel this way and it's okay for me to feel this way. And it's okay for people are going to hurt each other.
Right.
Acknowledging that,
Right.
that we're human and we all fall short.
It's relationship. Yep.
Yes. And sometimes apologies help. Sometimes they don't. Depends, you know, and we talked about forgiveness on another episode about how that can be a practice. And some days you can acknowledge that somebody has really good intentions and that it hurt and that you can move on. And some days you can acknowledge that somebody had good intentions and that it hurt and you're also feeling it.
And, you know,
today.
And exactly. And I think like for me too, being able to say, because you apologized, this person apologized. Thank you. I appreciate that. I accept your apology. I forgive you. And our relationship is now very different.
Yeah, you can create boundaries. Yeah, that's totally fine.
But for somebody that like hasn't done that, that is big. And I know I'm not the only one out there that has been either hesitant or just didn't realize that they were living in a boundaryless life where people could just come and go as they wanted in your life. But you, just like you have locks on your doors and you have walls in your home, you have the freedom and the right to set certain boundaries. And this was another thought that came to me that kind of goes along with this recently. There are some of us out there that in the name of being a peacemaker, we're actually just being complicit in some really unhealthy habits and patterns and relationships. But because there's something in us that wants to be a peacemaker and wants to, you know, smooth everything out and everybody be okay, you know, you can get to the place where
You're disrupting the peace within.
yes, and it's not helping the people around you because you are contributing to a culture of unhealth, of a lack of boundaries, of, you know, and it's all in the name of being a peacemaker or being submissive in some relationships or being humble. You know, we talk a little bit off mic about false humility, you know, like sometimes I think we have to check ourselves and make sure that is my intention here to be a peacemaker, is that what I need to focus on, or am I seeing that this relationship with this person or this culture that I am contributing to, is it actually unhealthy? And by me just remaining silent and not being honest about how things are looking and making me feel, am I contributing to its lack of health?
It's an interesting thought.
And am I contributing to a culture that's unhealthy and then is affecting other people around me?
I started the Netflix series, How to Become a Cult Leader.
Oh, Lord.
Not because I want to become a cult leader, obviously. That's not the desire.
Mandee, I saw you reading that book, Become a Cult Leader for Dummies. Like, what's up, girl?
No. That's not where I'm headed with this. I thought it was, but it's an interesting title because it catches you and you go, what is this? Like, who would watch, right?
Yeah.
But it's more about the psychology of how we're drawn into culture and community.
Ooh, yeah.
And about what type of leader creates that kind of culture and community. And sometimes it's a good thing. You know, you can have a really charismatic, strong leader that is an influence for good. And sometimes that's where it begins and then it shifts.
Right.
Because like you're saying, it becomes unhealthy and people start falling into behavior because they are so engrossed in this idea created by someone who is exceptionally charismatic.
And especially when it started off right, when it started off good.
Yeah. And they have good intentions. And then somehow, you know, because they're so drawn in and it's a family situation and there's all this community, then it becomes weird. You start becoming cut off from other influences and behavior changes. And then, you know, some terrible things have happened as a result of that with several different leaders over the years. And that's what the series was about. But it gave me some insight into human behavior and for our desire for community.
Yeah.
And I think it's important we all need that. We all need it. We need other humans. It's important. And I think that within the last few years, we all saw how difficult it was for us to be isolated.
Yeah.
And now I think we are craving community and connection. I think we just also need to be careful with that.
Yeah.
You know, as we are moving forward in this direction, that we are also allowing ourselves to be open to perspectives that challenge us. This is something that's been really big with me in the last year too. This whole "and" concept is allowing others to say what they need to say, even if I disagree with it, and be open to hearing it. Because sometimes it's a foundational principle that we're not going to shift. And sometimes it's a feeling that we might need to shift.
Yeah.
You know, there are times where we need to be exposed to something different to grow and to mature.
Yep.
And that's okay.
That's necessary.
It is necessary, yes. And then there are other times where we're going to hear things that other people say that we don't need to be moved by. But it's okay to hear it and then create the boundary.
Yeah.
And not move from where you are, you know?
Exactly.
And so for me, that's been a huge growth point within the last few years. And there's something going on in my line of business right now that's causing a lot of debate, and it's dividing a group of people who have been pretty unified for a lot of years and have treated each other like family. And then there's this thing that has come up within the last week. And I've been watching it play out on both sides, and different leaders coming forward and sharing their hearts and their belief as to why this particular thing is a good thing or that it's a distraction and a bad thing. And I'm just sitting on the sidelines watching because that's what Mandee does.
I'm going to watch.
I'm going to watch and I'm going to wait, because for me, diving in on either side right now, I'm uninformed.
Well, that's called wisdom.
Well, thank you.
To remain silent until you are fully informed. That's wisdom, I think.
And for me to become informed right now, personally, I feel like is a distraction from where I need to be moving towards in my life and in my business and in this family and community that I've been a part of for a long time. So I'm standing on the sidelines and choosing not to engage, because I think sometimes that's an important choice too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know how that's relative to "and" so much, except that sometimes it's okay to be aware and stand on the sidelines.
Well,
maybe.
that's the thing. It's living in this duality, living in the reality that there are a lot of opposing things that are true at the same time, and we have to be comfortable with that if we're going to be fully integrated, even relevant, I would say, to our world around us. We've got to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And, I feel like I believe that we are created for community. I believe that that's something in us that it's, woven into the fabric of our being. I don't believe anybody is meant to be a lone ranger. Because you see how well people do when they don't have, even a friend. It's leads to just the demise of the human being. I think that what can be lost sometimes is we are so hungry for community that once we find it, we stop questioning when things arise that are not okay.
Yeah.
Because we're so hungry for the community. We're so hungry for the friendship. We need to be seen and known and needed. I just think that when we reach the point where we're so much in need of that community that we stop using our brains and we stop questioning things that need to be questioned. That's where this "and" can help. It's like a helper, I feel like, because it can help you stop overlooking a gut feeling and allow two things to be true. This community it got started and it was so amazing, and now it's kind of getting weird. It's kind of getting cliquey. It's kind of people are getting rude and it's just fill in the blank.
And it can be better.
And it can be better. But here's the thing, y'all. It ain't going to get better if we're just oh yeah, everything that they mean well. They mean well.
But
we have to, if it's going to get better, it's going to get better because brave people speak up and say, hey, I love y'all. This is such a great thing and again, fill in the blank, a great community, a great church, a great group of friends, a great organization. And it has the best intentions in mind. And here are some things that are going on that I don't think line up with its original intent. Mm-hmm. You have to be vocal because, and this is even just in a one-on-one friendship, like, hey, man, when we met, we hit it off and like our hearts aligned and like we just get along so well. And I've also kind of noticed that we start like really getting into some pretty crappy gossip when we get together. We need to like back up on that. Be brave enough to have these conversations if it's in a group of 1 or in a group of 10 or 100. Mm-hmm. Like, you got to be the one. If you're seeing something, you've got to be okay with saying, hey,
Yeah.
These two things are true at the same time.
Courage.
Mm-hmm.
Courage.
Not easy. I'm not saying it's easy.
No, it's not, but it is necessary. And I mean, I think that's part of why I appreciate our friendship so much is we do sometimes have uncomfortable conversations.
We have. There's some stuff y'all hadn't even heard yet.
and maybe you're meant to and maybe you're not, that's between the two of us. But I appreciate that about Ashley is that we can both hold a truth to ourselves and it be different and still respect each other and appreciate the truth in the other person.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a really beautiful part of our friendship. But I think that is something, but you caught me saying but, right? And I think that's something that can be more prevalent in friendships if you have the courage to bring it forth.
Yeah. And I think we have built and are building an atmosphere with each other where we know that it's safe to be like, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And then you can say, okay, see that. Here's what I'm thinking. Okay. And think that is almost a secret sauce to longevity because when you are not honest, it's not going to last.
Right.
Whatever the thing is, if you're not being honest with yourself or with the people involved, it's just not going to last.
Right.
I
do. I appreciate that about you.
I appreciate that about you. Oh, Lord have mercy. But yeah, two things can be true at once. Give yourself permission. That's just what I would invite anybody listening to is give yourself permission. The thing that you would normally just kind of downplay this week, give yourself permission to allow those two opposing things to be true at one time. Take it, be it a relationship or, again, a larger community that you're a part of, and just see what happens.
The next time the word but is about to come out of your mouth, just pause.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you don't even have to say it out loud, just in your mind, replace it with and see how it feels.
Yeah.
It might feel good. It might not. It might be appropriate. It might not. And if you don't try, you'll never know. The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Find us on social media at facebook.com/Celebrating Women Podcast or on Instagram, search Celebrating Women Podcast. You can also email us a voice message to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to hear your story or the story of an incredible woman you know. Send it to celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. The Celebrating Women podcast has been presented by Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa in Tyler. Book your appointment today. Stop by the spa in Cumberland Shopping Center or online at handandstonetyler.com. The Celebrating Women podcast is created and hosted by Mandee Unkefer and Ashley Fisher. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast.